I saw that.
They just about landed the SN. Oh, they did land SN10, but it blew up a couple hours afterwards. But they landed the bitch.
Yeah,
like that was that's insane, dude. That's an 11-story fucking building that they're belly flopping in the air. Like, it's insane.
That is insane.
It's crazy.
Hey, welcome everyone to the NexGen podcast. Here I have with me Pretty Boy Beau from the Discord. You know him, you'll love him. Has the crazy plays. Not as crazy as Rick, but the good long-term stuff. So the reason I have Beau on today is I wanted to talk to him about space. Not just the ticker, but space in general and his knowledge on the subject, since he's studying to be an aerospace engineer. Is that correct, Beau?
That's right. Yep. I am in the Purdue School of Engineering at IUPUI, actually, here in Indianapolis. And yeah, I'm going to school to be an aerospace engineer. That's my passion. That's what I obsess over when I'm not doing the market is rockets and space exploration and space infrastructure. It's just so cool to me.
So did you grow up idolizing people like Elon Musk, just like, oh my god?
I mean, not even, man. I always grew up loving planes. You know what I mean? I always grew up wanting to be a pilot and stuff. And it wasn't until I was 18 or 19, and I got the chance to actually go up and fly in a little plane, like a 2-seater plane. And I'd played simulators my whole life, so I'd known how to fly it, and he let me fly it with him, and it was the coolest thing ever. And right then and there, I was just something in me felt like that wasn't enough, and I wanted something more, and so space was that. Space and rockets was that.
Obviously the next tier is space and beyond.
I experienced flight and stuff, and I was like, I feel like there's more to this. And it was rocketry.
That's cool. So heard you have some tickers for us today that you wanted to go over. Specs and maybe a few hand-picked ones that you thought of.
Yep. So the whole space industry in general, as I was kind of talking with you earlier, a lot of people, when they think of rockets and they think of anything space related, they think of science fiction. They don't think of anything that could possibly be real right now, or even in the next couple years. You know what I mean?
Right.
Much less profitable as a business.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that reality is much more on our doorstep than a lot of people think. And there are companies that are now going public that we can actually take advantage of. Yeah. And if you see this big opportunity on the horizon, this is, what is it? Apple and when did they go public? Apple?
I'm not sure. It's a long
whenever
time
Apple
ago.
went public, okay? Apple went public. But so I wanted to look at some specs. So the whole market's been really crazy the past 6 months, past year. Specs especially. And so I thought we'd start there because we have a few really sweet names in the spec sector. When it comes to space.
Yeah, give it to us.
Yeah, so first I'd want to start with, and if you see me looking over here, I got a whole whiteboard of notes, so don't mind me.
No worries.
The first one I'd like to start out with is ticker SRAC, Momentous.
Momentous.
They are a company that you might have heard about from a scandal about their CEO, which wasn't really a scandal. It's just that he happened to be Russian. And with the space industry, since it has to do with rocketry, and if you think, rockets can also be missiles. And so we usually don't like people from countries that we're not very tight allies with to be involved with those types of things. And so as CEO, he had to step down a couple months ago. And so you might have heard about that because I know that was a little bit, in the news. But Momentous Space, they're one of the, they're my favorite, I think, right now out of all of these current specs. because they offer a whole variety of services. A few of the things that they do is, well, one of the things, the main thing that you would know of or might know of is they actually supply, they're one of the few suppliers of the ion thrusters, the Hall thrusters for SpaceX's Starlink satellites. So the thousands and thousands, so SpaceX, they got a FCC contract or whatever, or permission from the FCC essentially to launch over 40,000 of these Starlink satellites up in orbit, in the near future. And so Momentous Space are one of like the 3 suppliers of the engines essentially for these satellites. So that's one thing, one very big thing that they have going for them, because that's big. That demand is not going to stop from these Starlink satellites, because they're meant to only last a couple of years, and then they have to send up new ones.
See.
So that's one thing that they have going for them. Another thing that they have is that they also do what's called a space tug service. And so essentially all that is, for the layman, is a taxi service for satellites. Let's say I'm a science team, and we sent up a satellite a few years ago, and we're our satellite, it's out of juice. It's no more propellant, so we can't do any. We can't move around. We can't reposition ourselves. Well, we can contract Momentous, and they'll send one of their spacecraft. They'll hook up to our spacecraft, and then they'll take us wherever we need to go. So that's one service that they offer. Another is just chartering their spacecraft to basically extend the whole life of your mission. And so you're basically almost buying it off of them. Another thing that they do is in-orbit refueling. And that's one of the bigger things I think that they'll be a part of in the future. Because, NASA is still looking for solutions for in-orbit refueling, which is still a very big problem. Because if you think about it, liquids in space, they don't really like to stay in one place. And so it's very hard to refuel. But Momentous Space is one of the companies that's been working on this for years, and I think we'll have success with it.
That's pretty cool. Now that you have me, it seems like all kind of futuristic and everything, and the idea of like a tow truck for satellites, and you basically say Momentous like they like a AAA for satellite companies. Like
it is. That's exactly.
Down, like I need you to move it over a couple of notches. Like okay, cool.
That is exactly
that is cool.
What they're doing. Yeah, it's very cool.
That's mind blowing stuff. That is.
Yeah, it's very cool. So that was ticker symbol SRAC right now. They have not changed the ticker yet. So they're still under the Stable Road Acquisition Corp. That's what they're trading under. So the next SPAC I'd like to look at is HOL, ticker symbol HOL, Holicity. And so they in the past around a month or so ago, or a few weeks ago, announced that they were going to be taking Astro Space public. And so Astro Space, to those who don't know, is a relatively newer company on the block. They were founded a few years back, and they specialize in smaller rockets. They just had a smaller rocket. Their rocket is about how tall are you, Dante?
About 6'2", 6'3".
So their rocket is about 3 Dantes. It's really not that big at all, but this thing can get to orbit.
Really?
They had their second try about a month or two ago, and at first they thought it made orbit, but it turns out that it missed orbit by I won't get too complicated, but they basically missed orbit by 0.3% essentially. It was just this close away. Hey. But so it was, and they were only projected to make orbit on their third try. That was their, goal. And so the big thing about Astro Space is that while they specialize in small payloads, they're not unique to that. But what they do specialize in is quick launching. So they were in the DARPA program, the advanced, defense program that develops, big fancy new future weapons or missiles, etc. And they were in this program that was designed to find a company that would be able to make a rocket that could launch within 48-hour notice into any orbit from anywhere, essentially. And that was what Astra basically did. And now with them going public and demonstrating that they can reach orbit, I think that they're going to see a lot of success in the future, being able to, contact Astra and get your satellite into orbit by next week. Traditionally, it takes at least 6 months, and that's relatively quick. Even right now, 6 months is quick.
6 months?
Yep.
So
rocket launches takes a while to plan.
It takes a while, yeah.
Yep.
Even for ones that are that small, that's interesting.
Yes, yeah, and that's what I'm saying. And so for, school groups that are launching these, university groups and things like that are launching these smaller CubeSats that would fly on these rockets, they don't have to schedule it 2 years in advance to get on a rocket. They can schedule it that semester and see their satellite fly. Yeah. And I think that will open up a lot of opportunity for Astro Space.
That sounds cool. So how do when you said those cube things, are you talking about when they're doing research studies, they send something in the air to collect information basically?
Yeah, so a CubeSat is a cube is actually a unit of measurement. And so a CubeSat there'll be a number. There'll be, a 2-unit CubeSat, which will be basically two cubes connected together. Or if it's a 1 unit, it'll just be the 1 cube. And you can have them all the way up to 10 of these connected to each other to make one giant little mini sat. But yeah, they a lot of the times for these college programs, they make these smaller, just CubeSats, and they get to launch them into space and they collect data.
That sounds cool. So I guess is that an industry that they work with the school, they pay for it and something like that? Is that
yeah. Well, so for that would just be for the school, but so there is industry for this. There's a lot of industry in the radar sector and scanning things right now, and that's only going to increase as we want more precise data, more instant better data, and that's only going to increase innovation.
I see. That makes sense. That's pretty cool. So basically, they've found a way to reduce the time that it takes to get rocket launches, so they can do it more often, and therefore provide a service for more people, essentially.
Yep, exactly. They'll be able to rival anyone in terms of how fast they can get your small sat into orbit, for sure.
That's cool. Those are definitely tickers to look into.
Yep. Love them. The last one I'll throw in there real quick is Rocket Lab. So Rocket Lab is the world's top small sat launcher right now, and they have been for the past couple of years. They're to launch on Rocket Lab, it costs less than $5 million, whereas the average rocket launch costs around over $50 million. So before we've had these small satellite launchers.
Yeah.
If you had a small satellite, you would have to wait years potentially and pay a large amount just to hitch a ride with a large satellite, if you're lucky, if they have space for you. But now, these small satellite providers can go to companies like Rocket Lab and now go to orbit for 5 million or less. And that is crazy. So just in the last 2 years, from 2019 to 2020, they had 13 launches. And Northrop Grumman, the traditional, rocket provider, a resupplier to the International Space Station, they only had around 7 in the same time frame. And that was really the first 2 years of Rocket Lab's serious start of their business. And so that has only started to increase. And so they just announced actually 4 days ago on March 1st that they are going public via SPAC with Vector Acquisition Corp, ticker symbol VACQ. And so they're actually my favorite of all the SPACs right now since their announcement. That's cool. So those are the SPACs that I have for you. Ticker symbol is SRAC, which is taking Momentous Space public. Ticker symbol HOL, taking Astro Space public. And then ticker symbol VACQ, who's taking Rocket Lab public.
Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, write these tickers down. This is going to be important because the future, I mean, sounds like there's a lot more room for growth for these companies going forward.
Look up cool. Peter Beck of Rocket Lab. You'll love the guy. If you like Elon Musk, you'll love Peter Beck.
Peter Beck. Usually, haven't seen that guy. He's a lot like Elon.
Yeah, he's his own guy, but he has the same,
aspirations for space exploration.
He has the same common good for just humanity, doing it for humans.
Yeah.
Not for any, just one person or greed.
Okay, cool. Excuse me. So that's awesome. So besides the SPACs, did some established companies that you wanted to talk about, and one of those is going to be Virgin Galactic.
Actually, it's not though. That will be saved for the next section.
Oh, really? Okay.
It will be.
All right.
So yes, I do have some more established companies in the aerospace industry that I do like as well. And the first couple happen to be Lockheed Martin and Aerojet Rocketdyne. And so many of you might know that in December, I believe it was, Lockheed Martin announced that it came into a definitive agreement with Aerojet Rocketdyne to acquire them in a big deal to acquire their whole business. And that was a huge deal because Aerojet Rocketdyne was really one of Lockheed Martin's biggest competitors in the space.
Yeah.
And I'm not the only one that thinks it was kind of monopoly-ish because the company Raytheon actually in February stepped up and said that they were going to try to stop this from happening. So we'll see what happens from that. But I like both companies very much. One, because Aerojet Rocketdyne, they have a lot of different contracts. First of all, they have the contracts to create the solid rocket boosters for the SLS rocket, which is modern Saturn V. It's the rocket that's taking us back to the moon. The first woman and the next man to the moon. That's the rocket. And we're going to, we have missions planned from later this year, was the first one, all the way up through the decade, I believe.
Wow.
And so it has many launches to come just on the SLS, if the program continues.
Yeah.
And so along with that, they also specialize in just solid rocket motors. Many different companies, launch companies, use their solid rocket motors for their spacecraft. Like that's what they use for their in-space propulsion. And they're also their just regular rocket propulsion. So they're a very big name in traditional solid rocket motors. And that's one of the biggest reasons why Lockheed is acquiring them, actually. And another big thing that they're doing is that they're actually creating, they got the contract to create a bunch of, like, I believe 3 very complex nuclear thermal generators, basically. Ones that, like, the Curiosity rover uses to generate electricity.
Yeah.
And so they got that contract as well. So Lockheed Martin as well, they got the contract to make 3 NexGen infrared anti-missile satellites. That was just announced, I believe, last month. They got that contract. They also, as you know, have the F-35 contracts. They're the contractor for those. They make those, and that contract does not look like it's going to stop. Let's see. Also, in just in 2020 alone, Lockheed Martin brought in over $123 billion in contracts alone in 2020, and that's before the acquisition of Aerojet Rocketdyne.
That's a lot.
And so Aerojet Rocketdyne controls the solid rocket industry, basically. And so with that acquisition, if that goes through, that's going to be very big. We saw, in December, Aerojet and Lockheed Martin both get that big spike when that news came out. But as we can see with Raytheon trying to put their finger in it, it's not a done deal yet necessarily. So I want to see that go through, though. I think that would be huge. But either way, I like both companies a lot. They both have long-term contracts to set them up well into the future.
Yeah.
And as we've seen through this pandemic, it's enabled them to get through some hard times.
Yeah. So do you think coming up, these tickers are going to be things that you're looking at these just forever holds, or like you're trying to buy the rumor, sell the news type of deal?
With the SPACs, perhaps more, you could, always sell the rumor, sell the rumor, buy the news, etc. But with names, the traditional names like Lockheed Martin and Aerojet, etc., I do like those more in my investment account because I think they're just going to have steady, longer-term growth, especially as the space industry expands.
Yeah. Their
space sectors within their companies are going to expand, and they're going to become the main part of their business, if they aren't already.
Okay, that sounds good. It's good. So the SPACs more so kind of sell the news, but on these companies here specifically, these are like longer terms. I got you.
Yeah, like with Rocket Lab, that's definitely a name that I would be interested in like holding in my investment account too, because if you look into them as a company and where they've started and where they are now, they have set themselves up as the leader in the world for small satellite launches. There's nowhere else that you can go to launch your small satellite for that cheap. There's nowhere. Not even with any of these new launch providers that are going public and coming out. But with HOL and SRAC, those are companies I believe that you can more take advantage of some of the hype. For example, HOL, Astro Space, they just recently were awarded a NASA contract to launch for a couple missions, to launch a few missions into space. And so things like that you can take advantage of.
And it's interesting that you pointed out like where you can, nowhere else you can go for your smaller satellite, because I feel like technology over the years has really became more condensed, if you will. Like it's become a lot more condensed with our computers and our technology. Like we're able to fit so much information in just like the smallest amount of space. It's wild. So as a company that can specialize in providing that service for like in the future, because in the future we're like we're gonna be able to collect information with smaller pieces going forward, so we're not going to need the 11-foot story rocket to get your
exactly
get your satellite to space, because that's just not going to be necessary.
Exactly. Yep. That's exactly right. And so the other traditional name that I wanted to shout out was Northrop Grumman, ticker symbol NOC. So you might know them from the B-2 bomber, the Batman looking bomber thing. They made that. But they also do the International Space Station resupply missions with their Cygnus spacecraft, and they've been doing that for years. And that's a contract that is not going to stop because NASA and all the international partners do not want a lack of resupply options. Because we had a time, I forget what year it was. I don't know if it was like 2007 or something, when we had like 5 launches in a row, resupply launches go wrong, and then there were different ones each time. And so those are times that show why we need so many options, and why that I do not see Northrop Grumman losing that resupply contract, which is a big part of their income. Right. But they also just a few months ago, they demonstrated a new program that they have been working on as well. And it might sound a little similar from what we were talking about earlier with Momentous Space. So Northrop Grumman, they've been working on what they call their Mission Extension Vehicle. And so these MEVs, as they say, they basically, get launched in space, and then they fly to your satellite. In this case, it was performed on an Intelsat, one that had, it had ran out of propulsion, and so its life was done because it couldn't reposition itself and stuff. And so basically, this MEV went over it, basically rendezvoused in orbit with the Intelsat, grappled with it, pulled itself together, and now it's one spacecraft essentially. And it was able to change. And so now, since it's one spacecraft, it can use the propulsion of the MEV to reposition the communication satellite, and essentially extending the satellite's life for 5 more years.
Wow. And
so just a couple months ago, they demonstrated that for the first time. And so Momentous, they haven't demonstrated that yet. They haven't had the chance to actually do that, whereas Northrop Grumman has demonstrated it now.
Okay.
And so they have actually shown it. That's why I do like Momentous, though, because if they can achieve this as well, they bring competition into that market.
So yeah, competition's always good.
Yep. So yeah, those are the traditional names I like: Lockheed Martin, Aerojet, and Northrop Grumman.
Okay, cool. So
they've been stable, and I think they'll remain stable.
Definitely, I like those. Sounds pretty promising. I have to see a video of them doing that with the satellite.
It's very cool. It's really cool. They have video of the grappling.
That sounds dope. So with all these, tickers flying in left and right, SPACs, and even Virgin Galactic with the recent hype, which of these stocks, which ones are you avoiding here?
Well, funny you mention. So first on my list, I'll have to say, is Virgin. As much as I love Richard Branson and like his personality and what they're doing, I don't think it's going to be a profitable business. I don't see it as a profitable business venture, really. They have had troubles in the past now with different tests. Their second test flight killed their pilot. When that happened, that was, their second test flight killed their pilot. And they had, just in December, I believe it might have been January, they were supposed to have a big test. Canceled that because something was wrong.
Oh no.
And then they were just supposed to do it again recently. had to cancel that again.
Ooh.
And so they've had many test failures and test problems that still haven't been solved in a number of years. And to me, that's worrisome.
Yeah.
Especially if I had a ticket to go up on that. The design of their capsule, it's beautiful. The space plane that they designed.
Yeah.
But if you look into the accident of how that pilot died, it's very scary of how that happened, because essentially the wings, like, he accidentally unlocked them and the wings flew up and it just tore the thing in half.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's scary.
Yeah. And so that frightens me. And I think, like, the more problems that they keep having and the more postponements that they give to flight tests, these vital flight tests, the more grim and, I am about them. I love any space company. I'm biased as hell, but I definitely have concerns as to whether or not they could be profitable.
Yeah, that is very concerning. If they haven't been able to solve problems or even do their test flights, because the bigger problem that they found, that is pretty concerning. Doesn't matter how nice it looks in the picture if it doesn't actually work.
Nope.
Nicola. But
so the other one I'd pass on is in the aerospace industry, and I guess you could say in other industries, is Boeing.
Boeing, really?
I am not a fan of Boeing.
Wow.
I don't know if they're willfully ignorant or just choose to bypass certain things to cut, like, to save money.
Yeah.
Because in the past 2 years, we've seen a number of massive engineering blunders by Boeing, whether it's come from their 767 Maxes, like the planes, or it's been their Starliner capsule that's meant to transport astronauts to and from the space station. During their first test flight last year, essentially the computer on board started just malfunctioning from the get-go. And then by the time they got it under control, they had lost half the fuel. And then, so they couldn't go to the space station. They had to abort and just come back to Earth.
Wow. But
then right before entry, the system messed up again. And essentially, if one of the engineers hadn't caught the issue, like 2.5 minutes before they hit the atmosphere, the entire capsule would have blown up, as well as any people that would have been in it.
Oh, that's crazy.
That was just luck that person caught that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so these blunders are like, they're going to kill someone. And so that is not something I want to invest in. Right. That's not something that I want to be long in. And so that's also a reason why I'm personally just staying away from Boeing in general.
Let's see. So you think it's because, I'm
not a fan of their engineering.
They contract a lot of people to do a bunch of things, right, for different parts. And
they do.
That attributes to the fact that there's malfunctions because there's less quality control over what they
definitely agree with that. And they have the approach of, so whereas SpaceX and other companies, put the thing together and test it, see if it works. If it blows up, okay, go back to the drawing board. Whereas Boeing has the approach, and some of these other more traditional companies, of test each subsystem by themselves until they work perfectly by themselves. Then put them all together and then go. And that's it,
Yeah,
test it on the ground, and then if it works on the ground, you're good. Yeah. That's their philosophy. Yeah. And it doesn't work.
Yeah,
it's worked for them in the past, Right. It worked for them in the past, but something has changed in the past few decades within Boeing. And it's mainly because the head guys at Boeing now are not engineers, the businessmen. It used to be the head people in these companies were engineers.
Yeah.
They understood what was being worked on, you know.
That makes
Nowadays
sense.
it's just business ran. It's
Right.
money ran. And you know that's what a business is, but it was still a business back in the day when they were doing well.
Yeah.
You know?
That makes sense.
So yeah.
Actually bearish on Boeing in the future. That's interesting.
Interesting.
I never thought about it that way, but you know, when you put it like that, it does sound pretty convincing that, you know, something changed. Like I know there's a big difference.
Something has changed. Something has changed. They have had too many blunders in the past 3-4 years. Maybe 5 years. Shoot.
And then, I mean, you're right to point out like the people who are in charge, because a lot of the times I know especially when I'm looking for a company to invest, and you know, I'm looking for like who's in charge of it, you know, what type of business is, right? So like if the people in charge have no clue about the business that they're running, like, you know, they don't know the intricacies, like they sold cars but they couldn't tell you how an engine runs.
Exactly.
And, you know, going forward, like they're not gonna have that passion and drive to make it, you know, have that quality control and or, you know, make improvements, because they're not going to be very involved in that. They're more concerned about what's the cheapest way to, you know, get this thing going.
Exactly. That's really has been their philosophy. It seemed like, what is the cheapest way that we can get this out the door and achieve the requirements of our contract and scrap away with the most, you know?
Yeah.
That has been their philosophy, unfortunately. And that's why, thankfully, with these new companies now coming out and pushing these traditional companies that have been able to basically just sit on the doorstep, taking checks from the government, from NASA, from the defense agency, to develop these programs that are supposed to last 3-5 years, that end up lasting 10-15 years, and they just keep getting paid for it.
Yeah.
That's because they know they can get paid if they just delay. And so thankfully that has been changing as of recent. And that is why I think now as the sun is coming up on the horizon for the space industry.
Very, very, very insightful. I learned a lot. I learned a lot.
It's my passion, so I know there was a lot there.
Yeah, it is. It's awesome. Thank you for all the information, Beau.
Yeah, no problem. If anyone's interested or has any questions, you know where to find me.
Yeah, hit them up.
I think my name's up there somewhere.
Yeah, pretty much. Boy, you can find them on Instagram. Also find them in the Discord at the NexGenInvestors.com. Join in the Discord. And we're running out of time here for a podcast, but thank you everyone who tuned in today. Thank you again, Beau, for your insightful thoughts. And
as always,
yeah, guys, space is the future, just not Virgin Galactic.
No, sir. To the moon, though.
Right. Yeah, literally. Take care,
literally
guys.
To the moon.